So now that I know the rear end is square in the chassis, now it's time to move on to the front end and get some measurements that way. So what I did was, I want this to air out all the way and still be able to lay down like it did before. So I locked this all the way down so the control arms are all the way up, and I tacked a piece of rod on there to keep it that way. And then I measured from the floor to the bottom of the lower ball joint grease fitting on each side to make sure those were the same height. Same idea as measuring the height to the axle in the back when I squared that up. So you want to have these the same height. And then what I did was I dropped a plumb bob from the grease fitting on each side. And when you do that, you want to make sure you drop it from the exact same point if you're on something round. So what I did was I dropped the plumb bob from the very outside on each side and made my mark. And then in the rear, I measured off the wheel stud on the top. And again, you want to make sure it's the same side to side. So I put a piece of 1/4 inch plate across these two lugs to make sure they were level when I measured off of that wheel stud. And again, you want to measure off the same exact spot. So when I dropped the plumb line, it was off the very front of that wheel stud on each side. And I got my lines. And then you can set up something along the side of the car, and you want to make sure that's parallel to the other side too. So you set these up. I just put a couple of wheel chocks to block it off so you could run a tape up against it and not move it. And measure in the front crosswise, measure in the rear crosswise, make sure they're the same. And then you can stick a frame and square or something else if you want to get more creative with it. You can stick a frame and square on each side, front to back, and then you can get your measurement that way. Stick a brake rotor on there or something heavy so the square doesn't move on you. And then you can run a tape right up against the square on the inside and get your passenger side measurement and your driver's side measurement. Same thing on the other side. And then when you're done with that, what you do is you run the tape under the car and measure crosswise. So you measure same as when I squared up the rear end. Take a measurement from the passenger side rear to the front driver's side, and then do it again from the driver's side rear to the passenger front. And then you can get numbers that actually corroborate. That was why I ended up measuring it this way, was because anytime I took a measurement off anything on this front clip and tried to reference it to the overall length, it just was not making sense. It was, the numbers didn't jive. So this is the most accurate way you can do it, as far as I know. The lower ball joints are locked in. There's no adjustment on this suspension setup. So those lower control arms are bolted in. They don't move at all, and those lower ball joints are pressed in. The only issue I could see is if the grease fitting was not concentric in the ball joint. But yeah, we're onto something here. I finally got numbers that corroborate with each other. So I got to take a little bit off the passenger side and then drop a couple more lines, take some more measurements, keep working at it until I dial it in and it's right where it needs to be. Stay frosty.